a lot of challenges in 2020. And so part of beginning something new and part of resolutions and part of setting intentions for the upcoming 2021 is being able to really release and reset from everything that perhaps seemed chaotic or horrendous or whatever label we can use to put on that. So let me just tell you a little bit about me. So I am and have been for the last 20 years a licensed marriage and family therapist, but I'm also a success coach. And I work with athletes who are stressed because they aren't fulfilling their full potential. I help them to identify and eliminate the limiting beliefs that are holding them back so they can show up with confidence and show up powerfully in every aspect of their life. And so I'm really thrilled that you're here. This is my area of expertise, and I'm always so thrilled to share as much information with you as I possibly can. So let's get rolling. Let me start the slides here. I wanted to start off by looking you in the face and saying hello. And let's get it going. All right. So this is Resolutions to Reality. I'm going to give you a step-by-step plan to make 2021 the best year yet. And so, this isn't just positive thinking. This isn't woo-woo. This isn't, let's just give lip service to this. My intention is to really give you stuff that you can use, like I said. So I love to inspire you. I love to kind of give you information, but my number one intention is that you take this information and you apply it to your life so that it creates a meaningful difference in your day-to-day and in the results that you eventually see. Because we create great years by creating great moments. And so let's make a great moment together. If you're in for that, I'm going to invite you to touch your heart and say, I'm in. And then let's get moving on. All right. So here's my intention. I talked about, putting the challenges of 2020 behind you and creating a new success trajectory for 2021. And when I was putting this together, I was thinking about giving you 3 keys that are essential to turn resolutions into reality and operate at a higher level of success. But I think I'm going to give you 5 today. So I'm going to be mindful of the time, but I have 5 keys that I know that you're going to love, that if you work with, I know will make a difference in your life. And so the other 2 intentions that I have for our time together is that you'll begin to develop, if you haven't already, a crystal clear vision and an action plan to accelerate your personal and your professional results. And then finally, for you to leave here feeling even more inspired, more confident, and more importantly, more laser focused so that you can achieve new levels of success. Does that sound good? All right. Well, again, celebrating you for being here, and just pat yourself on the back for taking this time, because this could be, if you decide that it will, this could be a game changer for you. And that is what I would love to hear in terms of your feedback. I'd love to hear that this was something that really helped to see something in a new way, or take a different action, or think of something differently. And I'll tell you about why all of those things are important in a moment. So let's start here. The second law of thermodynamics. Ilya Prigogine is a Nobel Prize winning physicist. And you may think to yourself, like, what does this have to do with anything? But it's relevant to us coming off of the year that we just came off of. He, in his second law of thermodynamics, he talks about how introduction of energy into systems either causes disintegration or it causes integration and acceleration. So why does this matter to us? So if we think about the chaos, which could be, I think it's fair to say there could be some chaos identified from the year of 2020. There was a lot of pivoting. There was a lot of perhaps falling away from things, trying to find something new. So knowing that we are actually open systems as humans, as teams, as communities, as countries. And when we introduce energy, so introduce chaos to an open system, we have the opportunity to really accelerate and grow from that chaos. Now, On the flip side, if you introduce chaos into a closed system, like an automobile engine, for example, that will actually cause disintegration. So the beauty of this and why I'm sharing this with you is that we can use whatever challenge that we faced in 2020, or perhaps you might still be facing challenges. If you're human, there's always a challenge. We can use that to catapult us into a whole new order of being. And so let's talk a little bit about why New Year's resolutions fail, because I think this is relevant when we're setting goals work with people around challenges, and when I'm working with myself around challenges that I face, because we all face them, we're human, it's important for me to always be reminded of a quote by Napoleon Hill. And his quote is that with every adversity, every failure, every heartbreak, it carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. So think about that for a moment. Every heartbreak, every adversity, every failure carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. So if that is something that you begin to get curious about, and I know that this isn't easy, especially if you're facing a challenge that you've never faced before, or we're coming off of the crazy year of COVID. Some of us are still in the midst of quarantine and all of that. But what if we began, and this leads me to the first principle, to look for the seed of good in whatever challenge it is that we're facing? So I'm going to invite you to ask yourself this question. If there's an opportunity in every adversity, what possible good, what possible opportunity is there right here, right now, in whatever you're facing? So that is the first step. Begin to get curious to see if you can find the seed of good. So obviously, it may not be readily apparent. And so this is something, once we get curious, we have the opportunity to look for it. We have the opportunity to plant it and nurture it and water it and grow it, so that we can really reap the benefits of the seeds of the good that we find. And so this is an opportunity for us to do that today, right now. If you're noticing, I'm facing a challenge and I would love to transform this, then I'm going to give you more of a structure for how we can do that as we go through our time together. So the second step is one of the most important things that I could possibly share with you. And I'm going to ask you to participate in a little exercise with me in a moment. But if you think about what occupies your thoughts, most of us have thoughts that just have been running, that are kind of running on, autopilot. If you have any experience with mindfulness or meditation, you're aware of the importance of beginning to notice what you're noticing. Notice what you're thinking. Notice what your thought energy is being placed on. And so, how much of your thought energy is directed to the challenges that you're facing right now? How much, gosh, I can't believe this is happening, or I have no idea how this is going to get solved, or I can't believe this, or, how did I get to this place? So, a lot of those questions and the focus of the problem are actually looking backwards. And with noticing what you're noticing, you have the opportunity then to begin to check yourself. If you're noticing that you're running a lot of curiosity and you're thinking about how the problem got created, versus using your thought energy for solutions or the seed of good or things that you can do. So I'm just going to invite you right now, and just bear with me, because this exercise, I think, it's really an opportunity for you to notice your thoughts too. So if you can, where you are, I'm going to invite you to close your eyes and just take a deep breath with me for a moment, breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. And I'm going to invite you now to just notice the feeling of your feet on the floor. Notice the sensation. Now I'm going to invite you to notice your calves and your knees. And just notice your hips. Notice your right hip. Notice your left hip. Notice your belly and your shoulders and your neck. Notice the very tip of your nose. And notice the very, very crown of your head. And now open your eyes. And here's an opportunity for you to ask a question. Who is it in me that can notice my body, but is not my body? And that's a powerful question, because you are not your body. You have a body, but you are not your body. And the other thing is, when you begin to work with noticing what you're noticing, you notice notice my thinking, but I'm not my thinking. So beginning to notice that you have a noticer, that actually it's metacognition. So that actually zooms you out of the experience that you're currently in and allows you to have an awareness of what's running. And that's really, really, really key in actually transforming some of the action steps that you take and some of the results that you see in your life. And I'm going to talk with you a little bit more about that. But step number 2 is to begin to practice noticing what you're noticing. Notice what your thoughts are doing. Notice where your thought energy is going. And a little bit more about why this is important to you. If you are noticing that you're focused a lot on the pain of your problem, there's a challenge that you're facing and you're noticing it over and over again, or you notice if you reflect back on the past year, pretty much did the same thing over and over again. And perhaps you created amazing results and perhaps you have some results that you're not very proud of. But the good news is having the burning desire for something to change, the pain of your problem, the pain of the challenge that you're facing, and the burning desire for what you would love to create. Those two things are actually essential for creating new results. There's a great quote by Dr. Michael Beckwith. He says, oftentimes we're pushed by pain rather than being pulled by a vision. And our opportunity today, because you're here, is to actually stoke the flame of the vision so that that can pull you in the midst of perhaps something that you would love to transform. So the good news is, if you're experiencing the pain of a problem right now, this is life itself seeking expression through you to transform. Something needs to transform, or there's a longing for you to transform something. So know that those essential energies are really, really powerful. And most of us, when we notice we're coming up against a roadblock or we notice pain, we're kind of trained to avoid it, unless it's like in a workout situation or in your sport where you're really trained to face it head on or push through. But know that these energies, from a, a, a mental and physiological standpoint, having the chemicals that get produced in your body, noticing where you're directing your thoughts with the pain and the burning desire for what we want, this can be really powerful in motivating us in creating new results. So let's go to the next slide here. If we talk about mindset, so this is something that I specialize in, and this is something that all of my clients get specific training in. But I'm just going to invite you right now to ask yourself, what is your mindset? So what's the story that you're telling yourself and your team, whether that's your teammates, your family, your team at work, about your success and about what's possible for you? What's your mindset? What's the story that runs about your possibilities? Are you somebody who you notice all of the reasons why something isn't happening, or you notice why you can't do something? Are you somebody who comes up and notices that the locus of control is kind of out external to you? Well, I need the big break, or, I need the raise, or I need another time. But just for our purposes, if the sky was the limit, what would you really love in that quadrant? And that brings us to, you know, I'm sure that there are things that you would love to see in all four quadrants. And I'm going to invite you for um, you're going to get a copy of this recording. If you'd like to go back and do this exercise with all of the quadrants, I'm going to invite you to do that. For our purposes, we're going to move along and just stick with the one quadrant you'd love to transform the most. And that leads us to principle number 4, which is designing your vision. So by asking yourself, what would I love? Step number 3 is required for designing your vision. So asking yourself that question, what would I love? That actually allows for you to begin to work with some images and blueprint the life that you would love to live. So that the results you'd love to see in that quadrant perhaps. And so I'm going to give you an opportunity to do this now. So take the quadrant that you've picked and begin to imagine if it all worked out, if you could have everything that you would love to have, perhaps being the champion, perhaps getting the raise, perhaps, attracting the love of your life, perhaps being in a vocation that feels really meaningful and life-giving to you. You take what matters to you and focus on that for this time. If age, if time, if money, if experience wasn't an issue, if there were no limits, what would really, really ignite you? What would you love to see in your life? So I know that this is not an easy thing to do for some of us because most of us have been so trained to focus on what's realistic. But just for our time together, give yourself this gift. Allow yourself to dream big. What if you could? What would you love? And so now that you have kind of your wheels turning in that quadrant and you're beginning to think about what you would love, I'm going to invite you to close your eyes with me for a moment. And let's just imagine that it's December 31st, 2021. And you are sitting with your loved ones. It's safe to do so in a COVID controlled world, hopefully by then. And you're toasting with your favorite beverage to the incredible year that you've created in 2021. So think about what you're toasting to. Perhaps a certain amount of dollars in the bank, or money in the bank. Perhaps it's a certain amount of success that you've seen in your career. Perhaps it's living at a whole new level of health. Perhaps you're toasting with the love of your life that you don't currently know yet, or you haven't yet attracted. So just think for a moment, where are you? Just come up with an image of you in that scene, toasting. Feel the glass in your hand. And feel the feeling of your success. And now I'm going to invite you to open your eyes. And I'm going to give you 2 minutes to journal because this is a really powerful, I'm going to keep the time here and I'm also going to play some music for you. But this is a powerful first step. You've begun to ask yourself the question, what would I love? And you now have an image for you being successful this year and toasting with your loved ones or loved one or, wherever you would love to be. Perhaps it's on the top of a mountain by yourself. You have this. This is yours in 2021. This has been created for you. So I'm going to invite you to journal right now the success that you've seen in that quadrant. So it could be, like I said, the X amount of dollars in the bank. It could be, attracting the love of your life. It could be, operating at a whole new level of health. Whatever it is that's meaningful to you, just write down all of the results that you've generated, imagining that you were able to install the new paradigm and start to create results left, right, and center that are bigger than anything you've ever known in your life up until now. So go ahead and begin. Okay, pens up for now. So you're on your way. You've begun to exercise that part of you that allows yourself to really dream bigger and to begin to think, like, what if I could? Even if you ask yourself that question and begin to entertain that as a possibility as you leave our time together today, you're doing awesome. You're not in the same old thing. You're doing something different. So I'm celebrating you for participating in that. For some people, it's easy to kind of get that the wheels turning, and for other people, it's a challenge. So good for you for participating in that. So I want to just share with you a quick story about somebody who, in my opinion, has always kind of lived from a vision. This is Mario Lemieux. Many of you may have heard of him. He is considered to be one of the top 5 hockey players of all time. And he won back-to-back Stanley Cup championships as a player. And he's the only person to win a cup as both a player and as a professional hockey team owner. And he was actually credited also with saving the Penguins from bankruptcy in 1999. And he also worked to keep them in Pittsburgh when the franchise wanted to move to another city. Another thing about Mario Lemieux is he had Hodgkin's lymphoma, and he overcame cancer. And he now has a foundation in his name that funds promising new medical research. Now, why am I telling you this? You know, in looking at his life and in looking at what he's devoted his time and attention and energy to, I mean, he says, since the beginning, I've always loved the game. He's used his platform as a jumping off point to, do a lot of other things, not just be a typical franchise owner, or not just be, just the greatest or one of the top greatest hockey players of all time up until now. He's using really using his platform and coming from the vision, like how can I use my experience to serve others, which I think is a really powerful question that you can ask. But I'm sharing his story with you not to say, let's just talk about how great he is, but the same power in him is the same power within you. There's a power that is allowing us to breathe and wake up today that, is life itself seeking expression through us. And the desires of our heart are actually placed there to be lived. And we're so unique. We're all as unique as our thumbprint. And so needing the world needs our unique life energy, life force energy, and the things that make us come alive. And who knows what kind of an impact we can have in our own individual communities, in our families, and even perhaps the world, the larger world as a whole. So just notice right now if you have any resistance to that. I think it's easy for us to kind of separate people who are in that, greatest of all time and say, oh, well, they're different. What if they weren't? What if you have all that is required to be the greatest you of all time, in whatever form that takes? And when you think about your vision, your quadrants, the area of your life that you'd love to transform the most, what kind of an impact do you think you can make if it were transformed? And the impact could just be like, I'm providing for my family in a way that feels really good for me, or I'm showing up with love to my marriage and my partnership. But that's a powerful impact. So I'm just going to invite you, let's not diminish anything in terms of our thumbprint in our lives, and the ripple effect that it could have for the world as a whole. So we're getting close to the end here. And I want to kind of, you know what? I didn't give you principle number 5. Let me go back. This is a powerful principle too. I'm glad I have these slides to keep me on track. Principle number 5 is decision. So if you are taking a look at your vision and the life that you would love to create in that quadrant that you've just designed, nothing new can begin without you making a firm decision for it. And so we've talked about, looking for the seed of good in the midst of a challenge. We've talked about noticing the thoughts. So you want to keep yourself on track with the thinking that are going to serve you moving towards your goals. We talked about working with, the expansive question, what would I love? And designing your vision. So here's where the decision comes in. A commitment before knowing all of the how. And this is what stops people dead in their tracks for most of us. Not you, because you're here. But when we don't know the whole route, it's easy for us to get discouraged and say, yeah, I don't think I'm going to do that. And so here's the beauty of this. I'm going to show you a little trick, a little brain trick and little reading trick that you can kind of direct your attention to now. So if you are taking notes on your computer, I'm going to invite you to take a look at this slide and see if you can read this to yourself. So I'll read this for you. According to research at Stanford University, it doesn't matter what order the letters in a word are. The only important thing is that the first and last letter be in the right place. This is because the human mind does not read every letter by itself, but the word as a whole. And I love this because this is how it works. What we now know about the brain is that if the first and the last letter of a word are in the right place, the brain can figure out the middle. And it's exactly the same with building a life that we would love and creating the goals of our heart and turning them into the landscape of our reality. As long as you know where you are and where you would love to end up, if you make a firm decision, nothing can begin without a decision. I'm doing this thing. You're burning the bridges. You're not going back. You're doing it. You're in. Then your brain gets to go to work on the how. So being committed, like I said, in the absence of knowing how it's all going to work out, that is the power of being decided. Because once you make a decision, you actually can create your own certainty, even in uncertain times. I'm doing this thing. No, I'm in. I may not know how, but I know I'm doing it. So I want to give you a quick example of this from my life. When I was training for my very first Ironman, it's a 10-month training program for most people, and I was 10 weeks from the race. So I had put in 10 months of training, and 10 weeks from the race, I had a bike crash, and I found myself in the hospital and was all banged up. I had my hand in a cast and multiple stitches all over the place. I landed on a graded metal bridge, so you can imagine it wasn't pretty. But in the hospital, the doctor was like, your Ironman isn't going to happen this year. And so I was just, I don't know if you've ever been there where perhaps this happened last year, where a goal that you had right within your reach just seemed to evaporate. Well, I was so sad. I was despondent. I couldn't believe it. I, went home from the hospital. I remember I was sitting in the bathtub, kind of surveying the damage and just crying, feeling sorry for myself. I don't know if you've ever been there, but that is where I was. I was in a deep pity party. And then I heard from this part of myself that said, what if you could still do the race? And at first, I'm looking, I'm like, well, my hand's in a cast. I don't know how I'm really going to ride my bike or swim. But I started to get curious about that question. And I now know that was my higher self speaking to me. But when I started to entertain, like, what if I could, I noticed that my energy shifted. And so I made the decision that I was just going to train as if I'm doing the race. And I knew, I'm like, okay, so I can't swim. I've got a cast on my hand and I can't, go outside and ride the bike, but I can go to the gym and sit on the stationary bike for 5-6 hours at a time. I didn't know if I had the mental fortitude to do that, but it's something that I could do from where I was. So I decided I was going to do that. And I'm sharing that with you because that was a decision that had I not made in that moment, my results would have looked very different. I didn't know if I was going to be able to get to the start line feeling like, actually without the cast, I didn't know. And I also didn't know if I was going to be able to get through the race with the training that I had for the last 10 weeks. But I decided I was going to give it a shot. And so here is what I'm sharing that with you to say, making a decision in the absence of knowing how it's all going to work out. This is the power of being decided. I'll tell you, this is a story for another day. If you want to hear more about my Ironman story, I'm happy to share. But I was able to get to the start of the race, and I did complete that Ironman. And I will say that's probably one of the sweetest things that I've done because of the challenges that I faced on the road to doing the very first Ironman and completing it. So be decided. I'm going to invite you to decide right now in this moment, make a firm decision. This is happening. I'm doing this thing. I'm committed to this life that I've just designed in this quadrant. I'm doing it. So you crafted this mini vision today. So I'm going to invite you to take action today. And here's what we'll do. When we're talking about the power of vision, there's a couple of things that can support you with this. And I'm going to fast forward through this because we need to bring this in for a landing in about 8 minutes. But when you're working with the power of vision, you've got your vision that you've created in the what would I love. And then I'm going to invite you to break it down into a number of two different goals. So you can have some hard deck goals. These are the goals that you know that are pretty easy for you to accomplish. Like I knew my hard deck goal was getting to the gym the next day and sitting on the bike. My vision goal was to sit on the bike for 6 hours. I didn't know if I was going to have the mental fortitude to do that, but I did it. So giving yourself the hard deck and the vision goals, that's an example of making sure you've got the guardrails to help you move forward in the direction of serving what it is that you would love. And then also celebrating your success. So getting myself to the gym, even when I walked in the door, I was like, oh, I'm here. I did it. I didn't know if I was going to be able to complete what I had set out to complete as a goal, but making sure that you give yourself the success, the wins for the mini steps that you take and for the hard deck goals that you accomplish, because by celebrating your success, you create a success momentum. Success begets success. So again, if you have a paradigm that's trained to kind of turn your attention to what's missing or what's wrong or what you're not doing, it's important to meet that with, no, I'm choosing to celebrate this. I showed up. I'm taking a step. I don't know how it's all going to work out, but I'm doing this thing. And then one last thing that I want to share with you, I'm just packing all of this stuff in because I think it's so powerful. I was really lucky in high school to have a really, really, really good swim coach. And he took me through all of the components of visualization for my sport. And if you are an athlete, chances are you've worked with the visualization, but there's 4 phases to a visualization formula. And I just want to share that quickly with you. The first is to conceive. So dream up the goal, which you've done here today. Start to dream it up. What would you love? The second part of the visualization is to actually believe that it's possible for you. So in my experience with